So here we are with the last part of the genetics PowerPoint. Here we have the crew to cap. It has part of the missing number 5 chromosome right here. Another genetic disease. Is Tay-Sachs disease. It's a hereditary disease that affects young children almost exclusively of Eastern European Jewish descent, in which an enzyme deficiency leads to the accumulation of fat in the brain and nerve tissue. Tay-Sachs results in mental retardation, convulsions, blindness, and ultimately death. So pedigree. This is a chart that's going to show you a record of the family of an individual. It can be used to study the transmission of a hereditary condition. It is particularly useful when there are large families and a good family record over several generations. So what this is just showing us is, a family record of cystic fibrosis. Remember when we talked about carriers? Well, from looking at this pedigree, I can tell a couple of things, okay? I can tell that the squares are males and that the females are circles. These lines that connect them mean that they were married, and the lines coming down are showing the children that they had. So this is actually not a child. This is a wife of a child. I can tell some other things from this. I can tell that there are carriers here, that they're female and male carriers. Okay, so I know that this is autosomal, which means it's not on the sex chromosomes. Now you're asking me, well, what does that mean? Sex chromosomes. Remember when we talked about men not being able to be carriers? Well, men are not carriers of a sex-linked trait because they have X and they have Y, and if this was carried on the X or the Y, they would express it, so they would be they would have the cystic fibrosis if this were a sex-linked trait. But they're carriers, which means that it's an autosomal trait, which means it's carried on chromosomes 1 through 22, and it appears to be a recessive trait, because it also, if we're carrying the trait but we're not expressing it, it means it has to be recessive. So from this, I can tell that this is an autosomal recessive trait, which cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive trait. Okay, so looking through here, this is hemophilia. And I can see here that they're a carrier female is going to be a circle. And generally, I've never seen a pedigree that didn't use circles and squares, but it could be possible. Circle always represents female, a square represents a male, a line connecting the two represents a marriage or a union. Lines coming down, connecting circles and squares downward, those are children that they had. I can tell from this and just looking at it, there are only carrier females, okay? There are only carrier females, and males seem to express the trait. So I can tell right now that this is a sex-linked recessive trait. One, because if you have a carrier, whether that be sex-linked or autosomal, you're going to express that trait if it's not recessive. So if you have carriers, you know it's recessive. Here we have squares. These squares mean that the squares there that are red mean that these children are affected, since all the males are affected and there aren't any carriers, and I can deduce that this is a sex-linked recessive trait. And there's another assignment going over pedigrees, and I'll have another YouTube video there for you to help you with it. Ethical and moral concerns. Okay, so when we talk about ethical and moral concerns, we're wondering if this is right, if it's morally or ethically right, defined by our standards. Okay, your ethics and your morals might be different from mine. So there are some concerns. There's potential for identifying and altering genomes raises practical and ethical concerns. And what that means is we can now alter genes. We can make organisms what we want them to be by inserting or taking out genes. And there are some ethical concerns about this practice. A long time ago, there was a pseudoscience of selective breeding of humans. It was a movement throughout the 20th century, worldwide as well as in Virginia, that demonstrated a misuse of the principles of heredity. It is a dangerous idea that subtly promotes racism. Hitler was a proponent of this and tried to create a superior race known as the Aryans. Cloning. This is another morally charged issue facing us today. Cloning is the production of genetically identical cells and or organisms. And what we do is we just take a cell from an egg, and we take the DNA out of the egg, and then we take the DNA that we want to clone from someone. So let me just rephrase that again, because we take like a donor egg, so just, someone's egg, and we take the DNA out of it. We take the nucleus out. And say we wanted to clone Dolly, which is the famous cloned sheep. We would extract Dolly's DNA and insert it into the donor egg, and insert that into a host, which would support the embryo and the fetus throughout development. So Dolly was famous all over the world because of the way she was born in 1996. She was the world's first cloned mammal. So there's definitely some moral concerns here. Is it right that we're able to clone animals? Is it right that we're able to insert and delete genes? We do it in food all the time. These days we have what we call bioengineered food, where we would take, a water resistant drought resistant gene in one plant and insert it into another plant, so that these plants can grow in areas where droughts are common, so that we can increase, the farming areas, because that's a new concern now. We're producing such a mass population these days. How are we going to grow and provide food with everyone? So they're coming up with these new ways, and one way is bioengineering food. And that's, is that morally or ethically right? Is it morally or ethically right that we clone individuals? Is it morally or ethically right that we use stem cells in research? And these are things that you should have opinions about, and form your own opinions from them. Well, that concludes our genetics PowerPoint. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of it.